Hey, hey, what's up, YouTube and everybody else? I hope everybody had a great weekend. I sure did, hung out with my buddies, got into some mischief on the hilltop, but that's not why we're here today. We're here today because I was recently presented with an amazing opportunity to basically have my first solo show in... Oh, I can't go giving you all the information just yet. A couple of things are still in flux and we're figuring them out, but as soon as we do, I will be back here with all the information about my solo show. And speaking of solo shows, so if you're unfamiliar with what a solo show is, let me break it down for you really quickly. Simply put, a solo show is where one artist displays a body of work that they've been making or working on for any given period of time. Some people take a few weeks to make a body of work, some people take a few months, and some crazy motherfuckers take years. And for me, since my work is sort of multifaceted, I kind of fall in between that kind of range. After that, we would have a two-person show, which, as the name suggests, is two artists either working off of a theme or just kind of otherwise collaborating in some way to bring their two bodies of work together. And then lastly, with probably the least amount of responsibility for the artist, but the most amount of responsibility for the curator or the gallerist, is probably the group show. And the group show is, as also the name suggests, a whole bunch of motherfuckers just putting their work together. And it's also usually around a theme or some sort of concept. For my solo, I'm working on a series of paintings based on emojis as a primary reference. The references themselves, they kind of vary from found photographs to photos that I composed myself in Photoshop, and even a few that I generated using AI like Dolly Mini. The first painting I'm working on is going to be a bit of a classic to some. If you're familiar with cursed images, you've very likely seen the cursed cowboy emoji floating around online. The cursed cowboy is a very low-res emoji that features elements from the Brendan Fraser alimony / just fuck my shit up original edit. A couple of things that drew me specifically to this image was Brendan Fraser's personal backstory and his complex history in Hollywood, as well as this sort of blurred boundary between support and ridicule. To me, it sort of inspires both sorrow and laughter, and it's kind of one of the key elements that I feel make emojis and hieroglyphs so strong. For this painting, we're going to be switching up media. So I've put my oil painting stuff away, my brushes are packed up, I've given them a spa day, and we're going to be working instead with the spray gun, the airbrush, and the spray booth. Throughout this video, I'm going to show you how to achieve a very high degree of realism using the airbrush. I'll also share the exact tools I'm using, as well as some helpful tips for anybody wanting to get started. Okay, so just having a look at a few emojis here on Google Images, I'm pretty sure I made the right color selections. I've got three good yellows that I'd like to use for this painting. We've got cadmium yellow medium hue, bazinga yellow light, benzim midazoline, bazinga yellow, and we've got the Indian yellow hue. And it seems like they're just kind of all interacting in different sorts of gradients, but I think I did a good job selecting color. So basically the only thing we need to do from here is dispense them in our containers and dilute them with some airbrush medium. So the airbrush medium is very cool, very simple. It's basically just a 1-to-1 mixture. So however much I put of any given color in the thing, all I have to do is match it with equal parts airbrush medium and mix up. Something I was very conscious about. What was I conscious about? I'm like undoing this cap so I can redo it, but I don't remember what it was I was conscious about. Damn it. Equal parts. So I'm not going to mix all of the colors just yet. I'm going to essentially start with just the main one that I'm going to use, which is going to make the base color for the whole thing. And I think it's just because I want to figure out a little bit more about how much I'm going to need for each one before I start dispensing. And so as you can see, this paint is pretty thick, pretty viscous. And I'm not 100% sure, I haven't worked really at this size with the spray gun on a solid color, so I'm not really sure how much I'm going to need. So I might be undershooting it just a little bit. But I'd rather undershoot and have to come make another mixture than, you know, end up with just a whole lot more and have to wait. And I'm basically just kind of eyeballing the levels here. I took a small note of where my line was. It's basically one, it kind of like the, you know, just that like, you want it to be like the consistency of milk. It's basically the thing everybody always says, and it's also applicable in this situation. Then we've got these lids, and they kind of just pop on. There's a slightly easier way to get them on. I just have to get this other piece for it. I'll do that now. So one of the really cool things about this little system here is that it is made specifically for the Iwata LPH 80. It comes with this screw-on little attachment here, and essentially what it enables you to do is hook up these lids so that you can have basically an upside down paint feed just going directly into your spray gun. Another great feature about this system is that they all have little screens on the inside, so if for any reason you have particulates inside of your paint mixture, they'll get caught up in the screen and won't ever see your surface, which is really cool. The last feature, and probably the one of the best ones, is just these little caps. So this enables you to put these away and just have them forever. In fact, I have this mixture here that is, I'd have to say this is at least 4, maybe 6 months old. It's just been sitting there in the spray booth along with some other ones, and I've just basically had them in there until I'm ready to clean them because I reuse these. But if you can see, you can see through the bottle because it's all the paint is settled. But if I give it a quick shake, you can see and hear that it's still very much fresh and fluid inside. And this is great because acrylic is notorious for getting dry. So from here I'm gonna just reattach my little pieces, get everything hooked up, and start spraying the base layer of yellow. It looks like we've got another little tondo in here that I sort of forgot about, but looking at it now, I think I'm going to use it for the show. Welcome to the spray booth. This is a pretty simple setup that I've got here. What I'm using is, it's a system by a company called Zipwall. And basically what they are is 4 sort of telescoping poles that use tension. So I can use these poles to pin large sheets of plastic to the ceiling and connect them to the ground, which basically just gives you these 4 walls. And then they also sell this kind of little zipper thing, which is really interesting. So it also comes with a zipper that has an adhesive side, and you can use that to make yourself a little door. But overall, it's a pretty great spray booth and something that you can just take apart and set up anywhere on the fly. The other thing I've got in here is my exhaust, and I got this from a company called Eptex Coating. And basically what this guy does, it's a 2-part exhaust, so it sucks out any sort of particles and odor that are in the air. And then on the back it has a secondary reuptake filter which actually eliminates odor. So what I can do is, if I wanted to and I was spray painting in here, I could close this wall up. It'll filter the air and push it back into the room, and I won't have to open a door or exhaust it in any way. I still do, just because it's like an extra measure of precaution, but I did take the extra measure of getting like that second filter. And to plug the exhaust in is pretty simple. All you do is just literally plug it in. There's no on-off switch, unfortunately. So normally I just kind of have to get behind the piece I'm painting really quickly, and I probably should have done this before I brought it in, and you'll just kind of hear it start up, and then things will get a little noisy-ish. You can hear it starting up. And what's really interesting is after the filter's going, if I zip this wall all the way up, the walls start to come in because there's a good amount of suction. And so the walls are actually being pulled in because of the air pressure. Taking a look at the reference, there's a bit of like a gradient that goes here. It's kind of like a highlight type of sheen or something. So I'm going to use some masking tape to create the hard edge of up here, which kind of follows this round contour. And then I'm just going to leave the bottom open and probably use a little bit of plastic or something to cover the rest of the canvas, and then paint it in back in the booth. Now that I'm happy with the background shape, I can start working on the facial features. Before I actually knew it was Brendan Fraser behind the cursed cowboy, I knew the eyes as boof eyes, so that's what I'm searching for on Google. I'm using the lasso tool with the grid overlay on Photoshop so that the contour of my selection will snap to the edges of the grid and leave me with an exaggerated, bad selection. With these paintings, I very much want a sort of cut and paste quality to them. Once everything is composed in Photoshop, I project the features onto the canvas, making sure to follow those rough contours with the cutting blade, followed of course by the drawing. I want to make sure that I don't overspray any color onto my clean yellow surface, so I'm using a mixture of trash bags, plastic sheeting, and leftover scraps of canvas to cover everything outside of my painting area. If you're going to be working on the larger scale, it's very likely you're going to have to start pre-mixing color. Because this step can be lengthy and tedious, I suggest that you try to make it as meditative as possible. There are plenty ways to do this, but for me, it comes down to preparing my space beforehand and just making sure that everything is as clean and organized as possible. Mixing all the colors that I need for a single painting can often take several hours, so I make sure that I'm working at a slow, steady, and comfortable speed. Our first pass was covering the entire canvas with a spray gun, but now that we're working on the individual features of the face, I'm going to be mixing colors in smaller quantities and applying them with an actual airbrush instead of a spray gun. These are the colors that I'm using. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing these names correctly, by the way. Pyro Red, Quinacridone Magenta, Ultramarine Blue, Phthalo Blue, Hansa Yellow Opaque, Cadmium Yellow, Medium Hue. The first color group I'm going to be mixing is just that of the eyes, and I normally like to break down each color group into 3 values. Now sometimes the mixture is small enough to where I could just mix it in the cup of the airbrush on the fly and I won't pre-mix anything. So in that case, what I'll do is just kind of mix a base color, and then when I'm in the moment, I will use my airbrush to actually mix up a color and put it on. I'm going to start with a little bit of raw umber and some Pyro Red. And these are the kind of things you just sort of have to eyeball. That one done. See, the other thing is like, man, am I even mixing enough quantity? I'm looking at the thing and I'm like, I don't really know, man. I don't think so. And that's kind of like one thing that I'm pretty not good at, is judging the quantity of a thing that I'll need, or the amount of paint that I'll need. I can get the mixture pretty exact, but just never in the right amount. With an airbrush, you're working from light to dark, much like you would with watercolor, and unlike oil painting, where you're working from dark to light. What I like to do is sort of start with the incorrect way, working from dark to light. This helps me establish the drawing, which is a lot harder to do if you're working from light to dark. At this point, the painting kind of looks like muddy, milky shit. And that's understandably so, because we've been working from dark to light, which in airbrushing is sort of a big no-no, except under sort of specific circumstances. What I'm going to do next is start working properly from light to dark, and I'm going to just be basically doing that in cycles until I bring everything to a finish. One of the disadvantages of working from dark to light is that you get a sort of blue shift when you overspray with the lighter color, and it kind of causes everything on the surface to look sort of hazy and kind of muddy. But what happens when you do it in reverse, working from light to dark, is that the colors just end up being a lot more pure, and that's really what we're looking for. Starting this round and moving forward, you're really going to start to see how nice and pure the colors are when you layer them properly from the lightest value to the darkest. And here we're giving some shape and volume to the eyelids with a slightly darker value skin tone. Here is the area I briefly layered a light over dark, but throughout the cycle it's eventually layered back in correctly. I'm approaching the mouth in the exact same way as I did the eyes. I'm starting from dark to light to establish the drawing, and then working the rest of the way correctly. As wonderful of a tool as the airbrush is, it's not without its minor flaws. Dry tip for me is the single most annoying part of the process. This happens because you're essentially shooting air over the surface of your needle tip, which is constantly covered in paint and continuously drying out. And many airbrushes come with a needle protector, which make it even harder to scrape off the paint around the needle itself. One simple fix is removing the needle protector, but then that opens you to potentially damaging the needle itself if you accidentally bump into something or drop the airbrush, which is exactly what happened to me. I edited out most of the times that my airbrush tip dried on me, but I did leave a few in just so you can see how frequently it can happen and how frustrating it can be. And you know, it's possible that there's some new kind of something out there that keeps your tip from getting dry, but I haven't heard of it. So if you've heard of it and you know some kind of fix for this, please let me know in the comments. It's really only just occurring to me now, but another reason that the nozzle could be clogging is because the airbrush itself is meant for smaller applications and I'm trying to cover a really large surface area. So I'm basically pushing the airbrush beyond its limits. Again, I'm working incorrectly from dark to light to correctly establish the drawing. Then I'll be continuing as before and working from light to dark in cycles until I finish with the very brightest highlights. I'm finishing the painting by spraying some Indian yellow along the outside border of the mouth area. This will help bring out the jagged cut marks and help me achieve the cutout look that I'm going for. Now, if you thought that I was going to forget the cowboy hat, you were wrong. I found a great cowboy hat model on Thingiverse, and I printed it on my Prusa Mini. To be honest, I'm not 100% about the cowboy hat at this point, but we will see. What do you think? Keep the cowboy hat, yes or no? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.